A very good afternoon to respected director sir, respected registrar sir, our guest Dr. Subodh Kumar Sinha sir, all my respected colleagues and my dear students. On behalf of R&D Cell, Amity University Jharkhand, I, Dr. Jaita Chattopadhyay, welcome you all to the event to celebrate World Earth Day. Have you ever wondered that how Earth Day began actually? The first Earth Day was held on April 22nd in 1970 when San Francisco activist John McConnell and Wisconsin Senator Gaylord Nelson separately asked Americans to join in a grassroots demonstration dealing with dangerously serious issues concerning toxic drinking water, air pollution, and the effects of pesticides. An impressive 20 million Americans, which is actually 20% of their total population, ventured outdoors and protested together. And that time, President Richard Nixon led the nation in creating the Environmental Protection Agency, that is EPA, which followed with successful laws including the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. And consequently, the whole world started celebrating this day. This year, the theme of this day is Restore Our Earth, which is much needed as per present scenario. Today, not only is Earth Day a day meant to increase awareness of environmental problems, but also it is becoming a popular time for many communities to gather to clean up litter, plant trees, or simply reflect on the beauty of nature. So welcome you all to the most important and significant day to be celebrated at the present situation of the globe. This event is the collection of valuable speeches from eminent persons to increase the awareness about the environment and earth among every single person of the society. This event is also consisting of essay and poster competition. We have collected already essays and posters from the students of our own AUJ. We have received few international participation also from our neighboring countries. We will announce the results in the latter part of the program. So on this occasion, I'd like to invite our respected director, sir, Professor Dr. Ajit Kumar Pandey, sir, to share his words of wisdom among all of us.
It is really pleasant to share with each one of you that since last 4 days, my internet was so poor that I was not able to interact with anybody else flawlessly. But it is the Earth Day celebration that internet says, at least today I am not going to give you any ditch, and I am able to interact with each one of you. See, participants, whether we celebrate Earth Day on a particular day or not, whether we celebrate Earth Week or not, what is most important is 24 into 7 into 365, we should be cautious and careful about Earth. Because the life exists because of Earth. जीना यहाँ मरना यहाँ इसके सिवा जाना कहाँ. A very old song I remember. This earth is giving us each and everything, whether you talk in terms of breathing, we are breathing because of earth, because of the atmosphere, which is consisting so many important things which we need in order to run our own biological system. We are getting all our feeds from earth only. We are surviving because of the presence of earth, and on the earth, nature has defined the role of each and every flora and fauna. We have the food chain, the concept of food chain, or you can say that nature has given us food chain, and the nature has done so good to us that earlier we were eating grass, so our appendix was active organ. Today we have stopped eating grass. We don't need to synthesize cellulose. So our appendix become vestigial organ. Whether you keep it or you remove it hardly matters. But can we survive stopping each and everything? Certainly not. So we need the ecological balance to be maintained. And for that matter, we need greenery. We need at least 1/3 of the earth crust be covered with plants. We need our oceans, which is almost 70% of the total earth, to remain with the level of water it is having. We don't need Antarctica ocean to have rising water level, because the Arctic ocean region is melting because of the global warming. We don't need acid rain anymore on the surface, which is increasing the pH value of the soil, and it is making barren soil. If just think, if we are not able to cultivate, how can we survive? If we are not able to feed properly to livestock, how can we survive? A small invisible particle called corona has jolted the entire world. Trust me, Earth has got all the remedies for such type of viruses and all, provided we keep Earth intact. But we are so selfish, we are damaging Earth, we are going for deforestation, we are going for industrialization where we are using gases which is emitting sulfur dioxide and inviting rain. We are creating greenhouse where the radiated heats are not able to disappear in the atmosphere. Rather, it is getting trapped because of the pollutants that is there in the environment. So who are the responsible fellows? We are the responsible fellows. So we need not to celebrate Earth Day on a particular day. Rather, we need to be careful and protective for the earth the entire days and times and moments. At least such type of webinar can give us fodder for thought, and we can think how to protect our own Mother Earth. Without taking much of your time, this is not my area of interest. I would say this is not my cup of tea also. So I will not take your time. Rather, I will allow our experts to speak on the occasion. We have the experts from biotechnology department. We are here with Dr. Subodh Kumar Sinha ji, who I formally welcoming on the webinar platform of AUJ on behalf of our Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir and our Honorable Chancellor Sir, and also on behalf of our Honorable Senior VP Sir and VP Sir, who has given us motivation, who has given us impetus to all such good things to be done, and also on behalf of the entire members of the teaching fraternity. Sir, Dr. Subodh Sir, you are most welcome. And we would like to listen much about how to protect Earth, of course, from horse's mouth, that is yours mouth. So over to Amit Datta ji to take the interaction forward. Thank you very much, one and all.
Joyita ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your informative speech. Now I'd like to request our respected registrar, sir, Mr. Prabhakar Tripathi, sir, to say a few words on this page.
Thank you, Dr. Joyita madam.
Thank you, sir.
With the kind permission of Honorable Director, sir, I would start not much scholarly discussion, but I would start with the very famous slok there. Mitrani dhan dhanyani prajanam santaniv जन्नी जन्म भूमिष्ठ स्वर्गादपि करियशे। ये ऐसे एक इतना अच्छा श्लोक है जहां पर ये है कि मित्र, धन, धान्य आदि सबका संसार में बहुत ही महत्व है, लेकिन माता और मातृभूमि का स्थान स्वर्ग से भी ऊपर है। जब हम बात करें माता और मातृभूमि की, तो अब हम इस परिप्रेक्ष्य में अगर हम ये कहें कि मैं अपने सिर्फ भारत माता में सीमित नहीं हूं, ये धरती माता पे अब मैं इस बात को वहां तक पहुंचाना चाहूंगा। मैं जब हमारी धरती माता अर्थ के बारे में जब बात करें, जब हम इनके जब इसकी सुरक्षा के बारे में बात करेंगे तो निश्चित ही है आज हम इस ग्लोबल पर्सपेक्टिव में जो हम देख रहे हैं वो बहुत ही सिचुएशनल, इतनी क्रिटिकल है। और शायद पहले दो वर्ड थे, एक वर्ल्ड और अर्थ की बात करूं मैं, तो वर्ल्ड का जो पर्सपेक्टिव है वो फ्लोरा और फौना के साथ जब हम लेते हैं तब उसे हम वर्ल्ड कहें, जब हम इसे प्लैनेटरी एस्पेक्ट्स की बात करें तब अर्थ कहें। जहां वर्ल्ड आज अर्थ पे डिपेंड है तो अब महत्वपूर्ण आता है कि अर्थ को सेव करना बहुत जरूरी है। इस पैंडेमिक डेज में व्हाट इवन नाउ स्मॉल चिल्ड्रन कम टू नो विद द कमिटमेंट दैट कि अब हमें प्लांट्स बहुत लगाने चाहिए, बिकॉज दे हैव विटनेस्ड दिस सिचुएशन, दिस क्रिटिकल सिचुएशन। अब उन्हें लग रहा है कि हाँ, अर्थ डे क्यों महत्वपूर्ण है और अर्थ डे क्यों हमें सेलिब्रेट करना चाहिए, इस कमिटमेंट के साथ कि हमें अब अर्थ को सेव करना है। अब सिर्फ हम अपने अपने कंट्रीज और कंटिनेंट को नहीं, अब पूरे अर्थ को सेव करना है। हम ये भी खूब पढ़ते रहे हैं कि दैट ओनली 21% ऑक्सीजन इज देयर। ये तो अर्थ की बात कर रहे हैं। आज जब ह्यूमन बीइंग में जब हम देखते हैं कि 80% ही अगर, so this is the kind of situation which we are facing now during this pandemic, and this has certainly opened our eyes, not for the this north or east or south or west zone. Every corner of the earth has to come to protect now this earth is there. So celebrating this Earth Day is very, very important to make ourselves understood and realize that despite our financial growth, infrastructural growth, our commitment still lies to protect the earth. And Dr. Sir has very aptly mentioned that the ecological balance, if once we disturb this equation, we are very much unfortunate and we would not be in the position to balance this equation there. So I thank to the organizers, I thank to the department, to the research committee also, that celebrating Earth Day gives at least one more stress to in our mind that as soon as and whenever we get the opportunity, we must ensure that what we can contribute towards saving Earth there. So I thank to the organization that this wonderful session has, and I'm very much fortunate that I am a part of this program also. So thank you, Dr. Jeta Madam. This is wonderful session. I would also thank to the department and especially the expert, Dr. Sinha ji, who also had to listen him about this field. Thank you, Dr.
Jaita ma'am,
Yes, sir.
I would like to request Lalit sir, our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir already joined. So kindly please make as a presenter, as a name Raman Jha sir joined.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes,
Good afternoon.
I was not able to possibly have the video on. I don't know. Anyway. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Registrar sir, for your words of wisdom. Now I'd like to request our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, Professor Dr. Raman Kumar Jha sir, to share your view on significance of the World Earth Day. Sir.
I think you should begin with the guest now. Let me hear him, and maybe at the end I'll add something.
Okay, sir. In that case, now his speech will be starting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. And now I welcome our special guest, Dr. Subodh Sinha sir, Principal Scientist, ICAR, National Institute of Plant Biotechnology, Delhi. He is going to present his speech on the topic Challenges and Scope for Cost-Effective and Climate-Friendly Agriculture. I request Dr. Dhananjay Kumar Pandey sir to read out Dr. Subodh sir's brief profile. Over to Dhananjay sir.
Thank you, ma'am. With due permission, I would like to say something about sir. So, and also it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Subodh Sinha sir, who is currently serving ICAR National Institute of Plant Biotechnology, Delhi, as principal scientist. So, Dr. Sinha has completed his graduation in agriculture science from Banaras Hindu University and master from Indian Agriculture Research Institute, Pusa, in 2000 and 2002 respectively. He got his doctoral degree from IARI, Indian Agriculture Research Institute, Pusa, New Delhi in 2006. He has very good postdoctoral research experiences from different top-rated institutes, including Bose Institute, Kolkata, University of Cambridge, UK, and University of Manitoba, Canada. Dr. Sinha joined Rajendra Prasad Central Agriculture University, Pusa, Bihar, as assistant professor in the year 2006 and served there till April 2012. Thereafter, he joined ICR National Institute for Plant Biotechnology as senior scientist and promoted as principal scientist in 2018. Dr. Sinha is a visiting scientist in the University of Cambridge, UK, and running collaborative scientific projects with Professor Howard Griffiths in the Department of Plant Science. Dr. Sinha has published more than 30 highly cited papers in the Journal of International Repute along with book chapters, and he is actively working as group leader to solve the nitrogen uptake efficiency in crop plants with his team in National Institute of Plant Biotechnology. So it is our great pleasure that he is with us today, and I would request Dr. Sinha sir to kindly share his lecture with us.
Thank you, Dhananjay. It's a nice introduction, and good afternoon for all Amity University family. It's my pleasure to be part of this celebration, and I must appreciate that you are celebrating a very noble cause, World Earth Day, and this is my pleasure to be part of this celebration. So let me share my. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You are audible.
As Dhananjay introduced, I work as a principal scientist in National Institute for Plant Biotechnology, which is basically located in Pusa campus. National Institute for Plant Biotechnology is one of the institute comes under Indian Council of Agriculture Research. And I'm going to talk on a topic which is very much close to me, and in the area in my lab is currently pursuing, that is nitrogen use efficiency. So basically, I designed today's experiment talk mainly keeping the view of audiences that are present in today's seminar, which Dhananjay told me that many of the audiences are students. So the topic is improvement of nitrogen use efficiency of cereals, challenges and scope for cost-effective and climate-friendly agriculture. This is such an area which is important both for economy as well as environment. So before is my slide is visible?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. Okay. So before I really move into the real topic, these are just a few trends and challenges of agriculture, not only for India, but globally. As we all know that by the end of 2050, we are going to cross the 9 billion population. And Asia and Africa is one of the major contributors. But by the end of 2100, Africa is going to contribute very significantly as far as global population is concerned. The second trend is rapid urbanization. There is a growing tendency of the migration of rural population towards the urban areas, which has a great consequences on agriculture as well as the environment. As we know that the population of the whole global population is increasing, we need more and more cereal and agricultural produce. But surprisingly, if you see the average annual growth rate of major cereals and other crops is constantly decreasing, which is not a good sign as compared to 70s and 80s. We all know that agriculture production cultivation is always marred with different environmental conditions like drought, foods, floods, storms. So these are going to affect the agriculture productivity in almost all continents, including the Asia. As I said, the rapid urbanization, if we see the trend of per capita calorie intake, there's a growing tendency, especially in low and middle income countries, that people from these countries, they develop a habit of using meat, milk based products as far as the calorie intake is concerned as compared to cereals and fruits and vegetables. So it has a great consequence over the environment because the production of meat, milk, eggs, they require a lot of energy, and by producing such products, we also affect our environment. Uh, uh, as we know that the people below poverty line plays very important, and for them we have to produce uh, our agriculture produce. Although the number of people below poverty lines are decreasing, but still the South Asia and sub-Saharan African countries contributes more towards such people who are still below poverty line. So these are the challenges for the agriculture, not only at the level of global scale, but also it equally suits for the India. So as my topic indicates that I'm going to talk something about nitrogen. Many of the panelists discuss about the oxygen in today's context, but my talk moves around nitrogen. Uh, why nitrogen is important? Because if you see, nitrogen is a constituent element for majority of biomolecules. Say, for example, amino acid, proteins, nucleic acid, several coenzymes. Especially for plants, nitrogen constitutes chlorophyll, which is very, very important for photosynthesis, due to which we get our food. And then there are several plant hormones and secondary metabolites. Each of these biomolecules requires nitrogen. We are fortunate that we have plenty of nitrogen in our environment, but unfortunate in a sense that this form of nitrogen, which is bonded with the triple bonds, is not active form, and many of us are not capable to utilize this nitrogen for the synthesis of these biomolecules because it is bonded with a very strong bond. So we need to convert this inactive form of nitrogen into the active form. So except a few microbes which has capability to convert this inactive nitrogen into an active form, that is ammonia, uh, majority of these plants require these active form of nitrogen. So the contribution from such microbes which are capable to convert nitrogen into ammonia is very, very less. And our demand for these agricultural produce is every day increasing. So because of this, we have to basically convert this elemental nitrogen into the active form through industry in the form of nitrogenous fertilizer. So we are hugely dependent on nitrogenous fertilizer to increase the productivity of all agriculture produce, mainly the cereals and vegetables food, because the nitrogen is important for all sort of agriculture produce. But irony is this, that the majority of this applied nitrogen is lost to the environment because of several process, and that depends on several factors which are actually creating or degrading our environment. So the apple one time on one hand, it is important to increase the productivity, which is very important because our population is increasing. On the other hand, if these applied nitrogen is not being used by the plants, they are lost into the environment and creating the degradation of environment. So we need actually such varieties or plants which can use the applied nitrogen efficiently. So globally, it is not only the problem of India, but it is a global problem that we need such type of crops which are supposed to be very efficient. So the outline of my presentation would be why we need such nitrogen use efficient crops, and what to modify and how to create such type of plants. Uh, Although my lab works on wheat and rice as far as nitrogen use efficiency is concerned, but in today's talk, I will mainly take wheat as an example. So we all know that for us, wheat is very important primary commodity. If you see wheat as a global level, every year we produce 700 million tons, and it provides 1/5 of calorie requirement of humankind, which is almost 2.5 billion people from 89 countries. The wheat is being cultivated in almost 215 million hectares. That includes a business of more than 50 billion US dollar. So wheat is an important agricultural commodity because of because it provides energy and protein for most of us. So I mentioned my previous slide that this is we are very dependent on wheat. So and because of the increase in the population, we need to produce more and more wheat. So we have to apply more and more nitrogenous fertilizer so that your wheat or other plants can give you more product per unit area. So because of these knowledge and this information, uh, after Green Revolution, the varieties were bred in such a way that those varieties are very fertilizer responsive. So keeping these genetic trait in mind, globally the nitrogen application increases, and till 2013, it has been observed that N application increases tenfold, which has resulted in increase in yield threefold. If you see the trend in India, that NPK fertilizer from after Green Revolution, it is around 25 times, which has resulted the increase in uh, food grain production is almost 4 times. So now we can estimate that we are, although we are increasing our production or productivity, but the cost of production in terms of consumption of these chemicals is too high. And currently, it has been estimated that India is the second largest consumer of nitrogen fertilizer in the world after China. So, and there is another estimate that India may double its fertilizer input by in 2020, because every year India is increasing at the rate of 6% yearly since 1970. For India, wheat is second most important cereal after rice in terms of acreage and in terms of production. So still our production rate is much behind than what is required, which is 1.1%. But what we require is that the production should be at the rate of 1.6%. So what is happening, we are trying to increase our nitrogen application. But unfortunately, the nitrogen use efficiency of wheat is just 30 to 35%, which means 65 to 70% of nitrogen is lost into the environment. That is our concern, not only because of the economy, because our poor farmer is basically wasting their money, more than half of their money as far as the agriculture input is concerned. But also it is degrading our environment. So the because of the nature of these nutrients and the different physicochemical property of soil, the applied nitrogen means 60-65% of applied nitrogen is lost into the environment. So there are different processes through which these nitrogen are lost. One of them is the leaching of nitrogen. And then denitrification of nitrate. So one of the lost form of nitrogen is nitrous oxide, which is 300 times more potent than CO2. We generally think that CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but N2O is more potent than CO2 as compared to its weight. So and which is being lost in agricultural practices. So this is our great concern. If you see this data of annual greenhouse gas emission, you will find the synthetic fertilizer and this cultivation are top contributor of greenhouse gases. Very recently, a report published in case of wheat and rice cultivation in Indo-Gangetic plain. So they have also basically they have compared two practices of nitrogen application. But here I would like to draw your attention that greenhouse gases are produced during the cultivation of these crops. So you can see this figure that shows the algal bloom. What happens when these nitrate leaches into the water body because of being a highly nutritious, it promotes algal growth. So what happened at a water level, there's a lot of growth of algae which doesn't allow light to penetrate down the layer, and because of this those flora and fauna which are below a layer, they ultimately turn to be died, and this is how it creates a dead ocean kind of thing. So these are a important concern of nitrogen application in agriculture. So it has been estimated that in India, we basically lost 720 billion per year uh, because of these nitrogen fertilizer loss. So in one estimate, it is said that if you increase 1% of NEV, you could probably save 1.1 billion US dollar. So this is the concern, agriculturally important problem, where we cannot leave using nitrogen because at one hand we have to increase our production, but at the same time the excess or because of the inefficient genotype, we basically lose lot and lot of nitrogen into the environment. So genetically or biochemically, this nitrogen use efficiency is a complex trait, and just to understand it easily, scientists across the globe they have divided into two component traits. One is nitrogen uptake efficiency, and then is utilization efficiency. So I will my lab mainly work in the area of nitrogen uptake efficiency. efficiency, how we can increase the nitrogen uptake, because this is one of the component. And then my other interest is root system architecture. So as root is the first plant organ which interacts with the water and nutrient available in the soil, so possibly this could play a major role in making the genotype more smarter as far as the uptake of nitrogen is concerned. So we all know that because of the physicochemical property of soil, plants basically prefer two major forms of nitrogen. One is nitrate, and the another one is ammonium. So if your soil is aerobic, wherein wheat is cultivated, uh, nitrate is the abundant form of nitrogen. Whereas in such an ecosystem where rice is grown, you have a reduced environment, so you will have more ammonium form. So because of the condition in the soil, there are different type of microbes, and ultimately you have different type of nitrogen available. But whatever way you are growing your plants, these are the major form of nitrogen. Plants takes these form of nitrogen for their growth and development. So once it enters into the root, it gets converted into ammonia if it is nitrate, and then it is converted to different amino acids, and then it moves to the shoot. So there's a lot of complex biochemical pathways happening both in root and shoot, depending on the crop species, and ultimately it gets incorporated into different biomolecules, which just now I discussed. So we need to just decipher which pathway or which genes you can tackle, or how you can tap this trait to improve your plant as far as nitrogen use efficiency is concerned. So apart from this biochemical pathway, there are several other players, which is, as I said, it's a very complex trait. So there are several other molecular and biochemical regulator which actually plays an important role in nitrogen metabolism. So as I said, my lab focuses on nitrogen uptake, but as wheat, as wheat is cultivated in aerobic soil, so it takes, or it prefers nitrate than that of the ammonia. So we know that since nitrate is a charged molecule, majority of these nutrient molecules are charged, so it cannot enter the plasma membrane by themselves. So they need protein which are integrated into the membranes, through which these nitrate molecules get into the different organs, shoot, root, and different tissues inside each of these organs. So I focus mainly on nitrate transporters because we prefer nitrate. So these nitrate transporters are identified in model plants, and there are two different type of nitrate transporter depending on its kinetics and affinity towards the substrate. So when nitrate is abundantly available in the external media, generally the low affinity nitrate transporter plays important role, because it requires higher concentration of nitrate. Whereas when nitrate is available in lower concentration, then you actually need high affinity nitrate transport system. Apart from these two group of nitrate transporter, we have two more groups which comes under chloride channel, and then SLAC, SLAH. So in Arabidopsis, we know that there are 53 low affinity nitrate transporter genes, and there are 7 high affinity nitrate transporter genes. So I just want to highlight that there are several such nitrate transporters in plant species. Uh, uh, because in soil, basically what happens, these nutrient molecules are very not homogeneously distributed. So possibly the plants have evolved different type of nitrate transporter so that it can acquire whatever nitrate is available in any situation. However, very interestingly, the high affinity nitrate transporters, which comes under NRT2 family, requires another protein which is called as nitrate assimilation related. So it has been observed that most of these high affinity nitrate transporters require this accessory protein. So many of the crop species like barley, rice, these partner proteins are known, but we do not know these partner protein of high affinity nitrate transporter in wheat. So my hypothesis is that if we want to reduce the amount of nitrogenous fertilizer, possibly the high affinity nitrate transporter would uh, play a key role, if not the complete role. So I focus more on the high affinity nitrate transporters. So I have to then find out uh, the the nitrate transporter as well as the corresponding accessory protein. So my lab currently works on this aspect. Apart from knowing and identifying the other nitrate transporter genes. So unfortunately, in India, when we started our work, we do not have a very characterized and well-known wheat genotype, which we can say those are nitrogen efficient or non-efficient. So we started our experiment by screening a large number of wheat genotypes, which comes under Astiworm or D-worm or Dicoccum. We know that uh, wheat which we use in chapati are Triticum aestivum, which are hexaploid, but we use different type of wheat um, in pasta and different type of wheat are used for pasta and semolina kind of thing. So we use those species as well. So altogether, almost 300 wheat genotypes were chosen, including those which were developed before the Green Revolution and after Green Revolution at Indian Institute of Wheat and Barley Research, Karnal. Because the phenotyping of such wheat genotype is very, very important. And we know that it is a little tricky also because nitrogen is there in the soil and it's very difficult to manage the amount of nitrogen in the soil. But we wanted to screen those genotypes which can grow well even in the presence of less amount of applied nitrogen. So we conducted this experiment with in a plot which are having a depleted nitrogen content, and we developed such type of plot in it took several years to develop such type of plots. So we did this experiment initially with the 150 kg and 0 kg per hectare and 3 replication, and then we measured these traits, soil nitrogen, and applied nitrogenous fertilizer. Then what, how much nitrogen is still there after harvesting, nitrogen in different tissues, and those were utilized to, if you see the formula, these parameters are important to decide which genotype is efficient in nitrogen uptake and which is efficient in utilization, or whether we can have a genotype which is efficient in both. So since it has a very complex genetics and biochemistry, it is always better to divide these component traits, because in one only root is involved. So this is why we calculated these data, and then this is how we conducted the experiment. And you can very easily see at the end of this year uh, the the same genotype, how they looks like under uh, optimum nitrogen and less amount of nitrogen. So we conducted this experiment for 3 years. We also included 2 more locations, but for our purpose, we restricted on the data which we got from the kernel. So this is how we categorized our wheat genotypes, and finally, uh, after third year, we grouped them into nitrogen uptake, efficient, utilization, and then overall. Now, the one of the limitations with this kind of phenotyping is we cannot call it as a nitrate efficient or whatever, because the urea was applied, and once you apply the urea, you don't know in which form of nitrogen the plant has taken. Although it prefers nitrate, but there could be other forms like ammonium or other forms. So you cannot precisely say that it is because of the nitrate transporter. So my interest was to identify the nitrate efficient rather than nitrogen. So out of this nitrogen efficient, I have to screen which genotype are efficient in nitrate uptake, because for my precise study, that is very, very important. Meanwhile, there are several reports as far as root and availability of nutrients in the soil. So as we know that these nutrients in the soil are not in a static condition, you will always have a heterogeneous availability of these nutrients. So as far as the nitrogen form is concerned, you can see that nitrate is negatively charged, whereas ammonia is positively charged. So the availability of these two forms of nitrogen is entirely different. So because of these availability of nutrient, and then organic matter, and then microbial communities, you will always have a gradient as far as these nutrients are concerned. Since nitrate is negatively charged, it leaches very fast as compared to ammonia. So this is one very important information when you start thinking of making your genotype efficient. So when you say that wheat prefers nitrate, and you know that nitrate leaches very fast, and you know that what kind of soil in which wheats are being grown, so your strategy include these information. Secondly, in a right side panel, you are seeing when you apply ammonium or nitrate, it causes different kind of modulation in root system architecture. So when you have abundant amount of ammonia, you can see it restricts the growth of primary root, whereas when you have a sufficient amount of nitrate, it restricts the lateral root growth. So there are considerable report on root system architecture of Arabidopsis. So when you start decreasing the concentration of nitrogen, you see there is a lot of modulation in root system architecture. And ultimately, when you have an extreme starvation of nitrogen, root basically ceases its growth. When you have mild availability of nitrogen, what root does, it starts searching the nitrogenous form, and because of this, these lateral roots gets increased. So Roots are very plastic organ, which has capability to modulate its structure and its architecture in the soil. Uh, the another very good report in 2014 that due to the availability of these nitrogen in different patches, plants have different signal mechanism. So it sends a signal from the portion which is deficient in nitrogen through shoot that to the area where abundant nitrogen is available. So there is a although it is these kind of information are there in the Arabidopsis, but root seems to be a critical or major organ which can be tapped as far as nitrogen uptake is concerned. So because of this background, I also started phenotyping the root modulation and the different nitrogen concentration. So for that, I frequently use a software which is called as WinRhizo. Although it gives you only 2D images, it's based on the images of the root. But since we excavate the plants and then we keep our root and then scan and get the data, we only rely on the two-dimensional data. So, but it gives you very useful information about wheat genotypes, how they behave, and how they modulate their root system architecture under different external nitrate concentration. So we did a lot of phenotyping at seedling stage by growing them in a hydroponic condition as well as in a pot condition. So in hydroponics, it is good that you can visualize the changes in the root. But what happens, the nitrate is homogeneously distributed in the solution because nitrate is soluble, so it will be available homogeneously, which is not the case in soil. However, it gives you very useful information because you can see visually your roots. Then I started using another system where I use a N-free solid medium, so which can give a kind of sense to the plant that they are growing in the soil. So when you really want to see the modulation in root structure, this is very useful. Because in soil condition, it is very difficult to control the nitrogen concentration. And for our experiment, it is very important to have a control over the concentration of nitrogen. So such system in our lab we frequently use because it doesn't give any nitrogen source. So whatever amount of nitrogen we apply, the plant gets it from this medium. So we on routine basis we do this kind of phenotyping, and very surprisingly you can see a lot of variation in wheat root system architecture and the different nitrate concentration. I have also included different carbon sources, but I just want to communicate how plastic roots are. Because of the availability and distribution of these nitrogen sources. And then having this information, we phenotype lots of selected wheat genotypes which come from the field. And then we basically, as I said, we rely only on those traits which are length and number based because we disturb the three-dimensional structure. So we only retrieve such type of parameters which are length and number based. So we have very interesting data over different wheat genotypes growing in different conditions. Now the second important for our work is the phenotyping of these genotypes as far as nitrogen is concerned. So ultimately, we have to measure how much nitrogen a particular genotype has taken from the external media. So for we generally use Geldal method and DMAS. This is just for students, and they must have been taught about these methods. So Geldal is considerably very simple, but not high throughput. Uh, depending on our experiment, we routinely use Geldal and DMAS. DMAS is a very high throughput, but it is costly. So depending on the experiment, we use both these methods. So this is very important. Now, the next question, as I repeatedly say that for me, as I think the nitrate transporters plays very important role. So for me, it is important to measure the nitrate in. So I started with a very simple technique, which is polarimetry based. It's very old method, Cataldo method, reported in 1975, but it is an excellent method to measure nitrate nitrogen. So it is based on the nitration of salicylic acid under acidic condition, and the complex which forms during this reaction has an absorption maximum of 410. So based on that, we set up an experiment of a depletion experiment. So suppose I used a 4 millimolar or 8 millimolar nitrate in my solution in a hydroponic system. So after a certain time, I actually measure how much nitrate is left in the media. So it means the rest of the part has gone to the soot system or the plant system. So by doing this small experiment, we have several type of experiment. I just want to tell that you can use it to determine nitrogen. Although we know that the nitrate is very active molecule and it gets converted to nitrite and ammonia. And because of this, we always boil our plant sample so that the nitrate detectors get inactivated and we have nitrate as such. But still, it cannot be called as a very precise method of estimating the nitrogen. So then I moved to another technique, which is mass spectrometry based. So that depends on measuring the mass of the isotope. So we know that most of the elements are available in different isotopes. So same is the case with the nitrogen. So nitrogen has N14 and N15. So some of the nitrogen the isotope are radioactive. So for such type of isotopes are not suitable for this kind of analysis. So we need isotopes which are stable. So the N15 is a stable isotope. So we frequently used, or in most of the precise phenotyping, we use the N15 isotope for IRMS. What we do, these in environment, these isotopes are available in a fixed abundance. For example, N14 is 99.63% is N14 and N15 is just 3.7. So this proportion is fixed in the environment. So if you enrich your sample and then you measure the ratio of these N14 and N15, you can measure very precisely how much nitrogen has been entered into the different tissues. So this is the most precise method of nitrogen phenotyping, and for me this is a wonderful technique. So just to explain it what it does, so Suppose you have enriched your sample with C13, then what you do, you just measure the ratio of abundance of this C13 and C14. And then there's a calculation. You have to measure this R value in your sample and then standard. And then you get a delta value. So if you design an experiment with enriched N15 sample, and then you measure N15 and 14 ratio in different parts of the plant, you will be able to judge which genotype is transporting more nitrogen and which are transporting less. So we do a lot of influx studies to determine genotypic differences in nitrate uptake. So depending on the question and experiment, we use all three types of nitrogen estimation. And we have wonderful experiment, and we have wonderful results which clearly suggest and demonstrate that wheat has adequate genetic diversity as far as nitrate uptake and transport are concerned. Then once you identify such type of genotypes as far as nitrate transport into the root and then to shoot, now I move to the nitrate transporters. So as I mentioned that you will find such nitrate transporter right from the root to the seed. So it is very, very important to identify such nitrate transporters. So apart from transporting nitrate, these nitrate transporters, some of the nitrate transporters work as a transceptor. In Arabidopsis, it has been observed that NRT1 is a dual affinity nitrate transport. Dual affinity nitrate transporter, which actually sends the availability of nitrate and also work as a low affinity nitrate transporter. So these information are available from Arabidopsis. So as I said, we have just a sec. So, as I said, some of the nitrate transporters has very diverse type of roles. As I mentioned in NRT1, one in Arabidopsis is a dual affinity nitrate transporter. It not only transports nitrate, but it also acts as a sensor or receptor. And after receiving the signal from the nitrate, it also controls the regulation of several genes, transcription factor, which are involved in nitrogen metabolism. It also controls the root system architecture. So these nitrate transporters are very, very supposed to be a key player for nitrogen uptake and improving the overall nitrogen efficiency. The only thing we have to identify such key players so that you can play with them and you can improve your genotype. However, this is information from a model plant. This is not from the wheat, and we all know wheat is a very complex plant. My slides moving.
Yes, sir, it's moving. Please go ahead, sir.
So, as I said, I started the expression of, once we know the differences, genotypic differences among wheat genotypes as far as their nitrogen uptake and transport is concerned, the next question is which genes are making them efficient or non-efficient, because you need the combination of these transporters for the overall uptake and transport. So basically, you need to know what are those genes responsible. So when we started this kind of work, the wheat genome was not completely known. So it was a kind of hurdle how we can know how many genes are there as far as high and low affinity nitrate transporters are concerned. So based on the EST available, we started doing the expression analysis under different external nitrogen concentration. You can see this is just a representative photograph with just few genotypes, HH, HL, LH, LL. So I just designed uh, experiment with a two different combination of nitrogen. So HH indicates that you grow the plant in a optimum concentration of nitrogen, and then you put it a optimum concentration of nitrogen for influx study. And similarly, you grow in optimum and then you provide low amount, and then you grow them in low concentration, then you provide high concentration of nitrogen or optimum concentration of nitrogen for influx study. So all possible combination, basically I wanted to know how the genes are expressing. So initially we have a good trend of high affinity and low affinity type of expression studies. This PNRT 2.1, if you see, this gene was reported in 2007, and we have sequence information. So if you can see that the same gene in all different type of genotype, they express a high under LH or LL concentration. So since we know that high affinity nitrate transporters are active when the external nitrate concentration is low. So because of this expression, we can confirm that see, this is this type of nitrate transporter. So we began with this kind of high and low affinity nitrate transporters. Uh, then we also worked on some other genes which are important for transport of nitrate from root to shoot, because this is again a very important trait, because in most of the cases what happens, this nitrate has to be transported to the shoot uh, in optimum condition, and in general it happens. Although root can convert nitrate into ammonia and then amino acid, but during this process you need a reducing equivalent which comes from the photosynthesis. So if root starts metabolizing this nitrate in, then there will be a conflict between root and shoot. So ideally what is hypothesized that whatever nitrate is taken from the root, it must be transported to shoot. So therefore, we thought that these kind identification of this kind of genes and transporters are very important. So based on the information of Arabidopsis, we identify genome-wide how many such genes are available. So in wheat we could identify two, and subsequently we identified another type of genes which we are currently working on. So then we all know that wheat has three subgenomes, A, B, D. Many of you are aware that the hexaploid wheat has undergone the natural hybridization twice. So initially these A and B hybridize, and then it gives rise to the durum type of wheat, tetraploid, and then subsequently this Tetracum tarsi gets hybridized, and now we have a hexaploid. So we have A, B, D genome. So it's very complex, 17 GB genome. So then we started thinking whether all three subgenomes contribute equally. So the initial concept is that possibly all three are contributing equally, but even then we wanted to study whether it is true. But in our case, we found out that it's not true. Uh, there is a homologous expression bias. So the ABD contribution of these genes varies depending on the external concentration. So this is very, very interesting when you plan to tap this trait at molecular level. Then whatever I talk about is the available genes. So as I said, wheat genome, and very recently in 2018, now we have a reference genome of wheat, and there are subsequently several genomes are now available. So we need to identify the new genes which are involved in this nitrate metabolism, so that then you can identify which one is the key. So I started the small experiment in transcriptomic approach. MicroRNA, we know that microRNA is a regulatory RNA which plays very, very important role. And then microarray, because at that time Affymetrix has a chip available, so I use that. And then RNA-seq. So we all know that the story of sulfur, which is really a success story in true sense, that whenever you talk about the microRNA, people will ask you which are the microRNA which plays important role, and then immediately your next question is which are the targets. So when you know these two things, then only the story will be complete. So sulfur is a typical example where we know the microRNA which controls the sulfur metabolism, and then we know the target. So similarly, we have examples with the phosphorus, but we do not know, I mean, the precise target of the phosphorus. As far as nitrate, again, we can say that we know several nitrogen sensing microRNA, but to my best understanding, we still don't know the complete story. But we know that there are several nitrate responsive microRNA, which indicates that microRNA plays important role. Then there are several such responsive microRNAs reported. This is considerably old report, and there might be lots and lots of microRNA in each of these crops. So starting from the model plants, now we have several such microRNAs reported under different nutrient conditions, including the nitrogen. So with this background, again, I started long back, you can say 5-6 years ago, with the known microRNA. So I started doing this experiment whether such type of microRNAs, responsive microRNAs, are available in wheat or not. So I started with the primary microRNA, and we got the expression of conserved microRNA in this condition, which gave me an indication that definitely microRNAs are there. So then I moved to precise, because I had a lot of genotype and a lot of microRNA. Then I moved to some high throughput type of techniques, and I started using the stem loop PCR type of techniques. So, and in this case, we basically use the mature microRNA instead of primary microRNA. So once you detect the mature microRNA, means you can very confidently tell that this is going to affect some of its target. So I did some of the experiment, and I identified and detected some of the conserved and known microRNA in our sample. Then I did some small RNA sequencing experiment. We did that, and we got several Nobel. And during that time, this is an old story. Several known and conserved microRNA which demonstrate that possibly they have role in nitrogen metabolism as well. Then, fortunately, we have a Affymetrix chip, and to identify the nitrate stress responsive genotype. So till then, we identified the contrasting genotypes of wheat in terms of nitrogen uptake and the utilization or overall nitrogen use efficiency. So we exploited and we used this technology as well to identify several nitrogen responsive, and then we validated a few of them, which is a routine practices. So we got several such genes, and we are still working on it. Now, my next interest, as I showed you this figure in previous slides, that there was a report in 2014 that sensing and signaling. So that was reported in Arabidopsis. So generally, they use a split root kind of experiment. So I also did a split root experiment in wheat, and you know that wheat has 5 to 6 seminal roots, so it's very difficult to make a balance. So I just distributed the roots in such a manner, since in one case 3 seminal roots and in another case 2. So this is how I generated a system where I could split the root, and I did this experiment. So far, we got a very, and this experiment was designed in a sense so that we can get those genes which plays important role in initial stage of nitrate sensing. So of course, several such genes we identified, and surprisingly, for in this experiment, we did not get any nitrate transporter genes as a predominant. So, of course, the upstream kind of genes were supposed to be more prevalent for sensing and signaling. And then, as I said, in 2008, we have a reference genome. Then immediately our question and our queries was how many NRT2 and NAR2 genes in this ABD genomes of wheat. And we could identify the 46 NRT2 and NAR, 8 NAR2 genes. We just remember, I discussed in previous slides that NAR2 is that accessory protein which are required by many of these high affinity nitrate transporters. So for us, it is very, very important. So when we localize these genes in different chromosomes, we could identify that most of the genes are there in the sixth chromosome. However, they are located in some other chromosomes as well, in other chromosomes as well. So there are several interesting story, and time doesn't permit to discuss those things. So we could identify the complete set of these genes and their location, and we did several bioinformatic analysis. Now the next question is, out of these nitrate transporter genes, how they basically express in different tissues. So fortunately, we have wheat expression browser available. That includes several RNA-seq data. So we also search our genes in those databases, and majority of these nitrate transporters were found to express in roots, especially in sibling spaces. So as you can expect that the transporters, majority of them plays very important role in routes. So this gives us a very interesting and a confirmatory kind of results. So in RNA-seq experiment, the Chinese spring cultivar was also included. So we got a very good result as far as NRT2 is concerned. Very few of them are expressed in spike and grains and other parts of plants. They are there, but majority of them express in root. So this gives a hint that these root based transporters are going to be critical for improving the nitrogen use efficiency. So just randomly, we tested or validated some of the those genes in two wheat genotypes. One is Chinese spring, and then another one is which we call nitrogen efficient. And we got a very interesting result as far as uh, external nitrogen concentration is concerned, as well as the subgenome level. So again, we observed a homolog expression bias as far as this expression of these nitrate transporters are concerned. So this indicates that not only the gene, but their subgenome is also important. So possibly the epigenetics and other factors might play an important role. Then, since nitrate transporter is a protein, so it is quite likely that they are controlled at protein level as well. And my interest includes the identification of the partner proteins of high affinity nitrate transporter, which include NRT2 as well as NAR2. So then I did some of the protein interaction studies. You can say the targeted proteomic approach. So this two slide is just for students. So we know that for protein interaction, we have two hybrid system where we fuse one of the protein of interest in bait and another with the prey. And when these supposed to be interacting protein comes together, the different domain of transcription factor becomes active, and this is how you get the expression of a reporter gene. However, we have another method of protein interaction, which is PCA based. So in this case, in previous case, both these activation domain and binding domain are independently active. Whereas in PCA based, you have to complement because you use such a protein in this case where you split that protein. So in a splitter condition, they don't work, unlikely to the two habit system, which is very useful methods when you deal with the membrane protein. So as I said, I use these two methods for my work: the split ubiquitin assay and bimolecular fluorescence complementation assay. So in this case, we know that ubiquitin is a very ubiquitous protein, and ubiquitin is split into two forms, the N and C terminal. So you fuse your protein in either N or C terminal of these ubiquitin. So unless and until the partner protein come closer, you cannot have a active ubiquitin. And then it has a linked or fused with a protease, and then you have a reporting mechanism. Then through which you can determine whether the two proteins are interacting or not. So for in vitro type of protein-protein interaction, especially when you are dealing with a membrane protein, split ubiquitin is the ideal method of protein-protein interaction experiment. Whereas in vivo type, where you want to see the protein in a live cell, so the bimolecular fluorescence complementation is another method. So in this case, as the figure indicates, you have a fluorescent protein, again splitted. So when you have two interacting protein, then your fluorescence protein become active. So when you excite it, and then it will emit it. So based on this excitation and emission wavelength, you can visualize the interaction of two proteins. So in any protein-protein interaction studies, you have to demonstrate your experiment by 2-3 methods. So I am using this split ubiquitin for in vitro PPI, and then BIPC for in vivo protein-protein interaction. So as I said, I did these experiments in a different combination of NRT2 and NAR2, and then you will get this kind of colonies of yeast in which you transport both the partner proteins, and when there is an interaction between these two proteins, you will have the growth of your yeast cells under selection media. You can also estimate the reporter genes, in this case beta galactosidase. So this is how we are trying to identify the component protein. Currently, we are working on this BC. We have cloned them in a different vector, and currently we did some of the experiments, but we have yet to demonstrate the interaction in vivo. Another method I have planned to complement the Arabidopsis mutant for the real phenotyping. So once we identified some of the selected component or expected partners, you have to complement these two proteins in a mutant study. So I have planned to complement the Arabidopsis mutant, and then I will see whether the complemented plants are able to uptake the nitrogen in these combination or not. So still we are working on this aspect. With this, I would like to stop my talk, and I would like to thank my students and the scientists and director of NIPB. I would also like to acknowledge the funding agency who has supported the all nitrogen, the all experiment that the projects that is going on in my lab. So thanks for your interest, and if you have any question, I'll be happy to answer those. I will try my best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Subodh, sir. And Amit, sir, is there any student? Do you have any query?
Ma'am, till now, no any query is there in the chat box.
Okay, okay. Subodh, sir, thank you very much for your informative and much request session on this perspective. I'll request personally, Dr. Subodh, sir, if you are interested to collaborate with AUG faculty members. In that case,
Sure.
many are there in biotechnology department who will be interested to be part of this important research work.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, sir. And now we will move to the next part of the event, that is essay and e-poster competition. The students from AUJ and also few external participants have sent their essays and e-poster to us. Even we received few international entries from our neighboring countries. Now I'd like to request Dr. Amit Kumar Datta sir to announce the results of essay and e-poster competition. Over to Amit sir.
Ma'am, is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
So very good evening. We are just in the second session of this World Art Day celebration. And here we have, apart from this guest lecture, we are having already e-poster competition and essay writing competition. Jaita ma'am, am I audible and both?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
you're audible.
Yeah. So coming to the first part of e-poster competition, we have received many posters, but all the posters are really very good. I already few of the posters I am just sharing with you all. Many posters they have written about based on the theme Restore Our Art. One of the posters student Akanksha Biswas has submitted, that is plant. You have to give more plant more trees. So there are many posters are there. Many participants had mentioned that how we can save the planet to stop the global warming. And many of the students have submitted posters how we can reuse, how we can recycle, and how we can reduce. So we can stop that deforestation. So there are many posters we have received. Apart from these three posters, also we have received another posters from all AUJ, as Manbam already told. Apart from AUJ also, many international participants from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, and from Agra also, we have received many posters. So another one thing is choose your things, World Art Day. There are a few of the posters that I am sharing with you all. These all are the posters students had submitted through mail. And another thing is another posters. These are the few posters. Few of the students already mentioned about stop global warming, and few of the students again we can touch the world by reducing, by reusing and recycling that thing. So apart from this, all posters, it was very difficult to judge all that posters. So we are having 4 judges, 4 expert evaluators, those who evaluate all posters, and Professor Dr. Mithun Chakravarti sir, Dr. Ambrish Gautam sir, Dr. Madhuri Mahato ma'am, and Dr. Dhananjay Kumar Pandya sir strictly evaluated all posters. And apart from this and apart from their judgment, finally we conclude that the winners of e-poster competition. The e-poster in round, that is the third, comes to the Mitali Panda, that is BSc Honors Biotechnology, and that is her poster, and he secured 91 marks out of 120, and he scored 75.8%, and this is the different scores that she received from her poster. So congratulations to Ms. Mitali Panda, BSc Honors Biotechnology, for securing the third position in e-poster competition. Second comes to the second part, that is e-poster competition second, Miss Aditi Bose, BA Economics. She received the second position in e-poster competition. He pointed about how if you stop the deforestation, what will be the effect. So congratulations, Miss Aditi, for your poster from BA Economics, and congratulations once again. Now comes to the first about the e-poster competition, Miss Niharika Kumari from BCom Honor. He also pointed out about how we can reuse, how we can reduce, and how we can recycle, about to save the art, to restore the art. So congratulations, Miss Niharika of BCom Honors. She secured 78.3% of posters that are given by the different evaluators. Now, coming to the different essay writing competition, we have received many essays, and apart from this, the first art essay goes to again Miss Mitali Panda, BSc Honors, Biotechnology. She written on Restore Our Art, as he mentioned that we do not inherit the art from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So congratulations once again, Ms. Mitali, BSc Honors Biotech. She secured 75% marks and she received 90 marks out of 120. Now coming to the second, as all essays and all posters are very good, so jointly there are two persons who are secured in essay writing competition. So jointly second Ms. Prachi Kumari from MCA department. Her poster is related again, a healthy planet is not only for luxury, it can save our earth also. So another one, congratulations Ms. Prachi from MCA department. And another one jointly second, that is Mohammad Ramis from BTech Electronics and Communication Engineering. And he also written on Restore Our Art. The art is what we have in common. So he written on that topics about essay. That is congratulations Mohammad Ramis for securing 75.8 marks and jointly secured the second position in essay writing competition. Now coming to the first of essay writing competition, is Priya Ghoshal. Hope so. He is BTech Biotechnology. Our topic is recent impact of Corona on environment. So he pointed about and he also mentioned few of the what will be the effect during the lockdown. So congratulations, Ms. Priya of BTech Biotech for winning the first position in essay writing competition. So on behalf of Research and Development Cell and Development Team, we congratulations to all the winners of these two events. And also we are really thankful and acknowledged to all the evaluators, especially Professor Dr. Mithun Chakraborty sir, Dr. Amrish Gautam sir, Dr. Madhuri Mahato ma'am, and Dr. Dhananjay Kumar Pandey sir for sharing his precious time for evaluating all that questions. So thank you all. Over to Jaita.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations all the prize winners and also the participants. In this pandemic situation, your active participation is appreciable. Now, I would like to request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Dr. Raman Kumar Jha, sir, to share your view on significance of the World Earth Day. Over to sir.
Thank you so much, Jaita. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm extremely pleased to see the contributions from the student side and the involvement of faculty for evaluating the same. Apart from an excellent lecture that we had from Dr. Subodh, if I may name him correctly. Yes, Subodh Kumar Sinha. It was one of the real scientific exposure of not only going into details, but also trying to analyze and give you the possible options of some problem. A very small problem people can now see, especially the student side, that if you're just concentrating on one element called nitrogen and looking at its impact on the plants and then aspects of protein, then the chemical structure, how they get they interact, how the roots and the shoots are behaving based on the nitrogen intake and how the same can be synthesized, and a huge series of experiments which is done in the lab. So one particular element to be really present in the environment in the form of the food that you take involves so much of experimentation and understanding. Now, recall how many elements we have in nature. And then if one laboratory is able to try and analyze one element in this fashion, and then so much of energy goes in, how much of energy is nature giving in to understand all the elements required for human being and animals as well as the plants themselves? So look at how globally or how accurately the nature is functioning and giving us everything which we require. And what we require is very well known: the air, the water, the environment, the food to eat, and related aspects which depend on all these, which is health, the type of thought processes that you have, and all that. Now, what is our concern? What is the real problem on this particular day, and why do we celebrate this particular day called Earth Day? Saluting the speaker first, I must congratulate all of you for really choosing an apt topic one. The greatest threat to our planet. What is the greatest threat to our planet? As said by Robert Swan, is the belief that someone else will save it. Now, this is a mentality. The earth, or the problems of the earth, or the humankind as a whole, or the living beings as a whole, cannot be saved by anybody else or somebody else if you yourself are not involved. And that is where I thought I would put my point of view, that each one of us have to play a responsible role in order to have a better living situation or an environment. Otherwise, what we are suffering today, and we are in the lockdown situation again today for the second time, is nothing but misuse of nature that we have had. And how do we come out of it? There is a global understanding right from 1970. They began with this organizing Earth Day programs, and almost 200 countries have joined together to sign an agreement to save this earth. What as an individual should we do? And I would stress on certain points which you can look for yourself as to how important they are. Before we begin, let me tell you that our planet supports life to almost I would say 10 million species which are there on the earth. To be exact, almost around 9, but I put it as 10. And currently they are all experiencing extreme degradation. Now there is a problem, which means all the species which are existing on the earth are facing degradation or an unprecedented crisis, or the climate change, because of the climate change. And who is responsible? It is because of the human activity that things have taken this shape. People say that there are viruses in the animals which were always existing when they were in their natural environment have come now to the belly of the human being because we started consuming animals themselves. We started intruding in their space. The type of, I would say, irresponsible behavior that we as human beings have taken is what we are facing today. Most of the people are not aware that Americans are the biggest consumers on the planet. I don't know whether you know, but if you know, as a small example, you can say that Americans constitute 5% of the population, but they consume almost 24% of the world's energy. Now, this imbalance you can see for yourself. Just the 5% of population is eating up 24% of energy. This imbalance exists because they are well off and they can do what they want to do. The greatest concern, therefore, today is our health and well-being and our planet itself. So what should be our mission as a university, as a student, as a teacher, is to make people aware how things are distributed across the globe, how are they getting utilized, and what can we do to restore the earth, as is the message on the Earth Day. There are two websites which I could go through and try and understand. One was the earthday.org. All of you should visit that website and be a member and contribute in your manner. There are various opportunities there. And then the health, the planet health itself, the planethealth.com. So go through that and try and understand how our earth is getting degraded and what are the options which are available to make your own contributions. I would put some points here for the benefit of students so that you can choose one of these. Out of so many options available, choose one of these, make that your habit. The earth will be a better place to stay. 1. Single-use plastic. Preserving fresh water. Paper consumption and utilities. Genetically modified organisms and its uses. Then reducing consumption of animal protein, which is what we said is responsible for possible COVID-19. Sugar production and consumption. The wastage of food, the electronic wastage, the support local food production, which is happening nowadays, but a lot is still required. Car emission, batteries, dairy production, household plastics, support local businesses, then palm oil production, overconsumption, certified organic products, chemical production, bee colony collapse. Now, it is said that there are so many animals, the small animals, insects, bees and vultures, they have all gone away. They have all perished because of the high temperature and the degradation of the system. Composting, microfibers, junk mail, then energy conservation, recycling, overfishing, upcycling, planting trees, volunteering, cultivating joy. This also is an important contribution on the earth. Then supporting fair trade, harnessing solar energy, wind energy, education. Education itself is one such area, and there are thousands of such. I can go on reading, but that's not important. Go through the website and choose one of those where you as an individual would contribute. Unless you start contributing for saving this particular earth, nobody else is going to protect it. You're seeing the government collapse, you're seeing the administrative collapse, you're seeing the doctors or the hospitals collapsing when the nature takes over. So be aware, and that is why this particular session was organized, even though technical in nature, but the aim and the importance of the day is to become aware and start contributing positively to save this particular earth. I'll dwell a bit on education because that's our area of concern. The studies have shown that if you have a higher level of education, then an individual has more concern about the environment. Now, naturally, therefore, the extent of education must increase day by day, and which is where you can also play a role that your neighbors, your relatives all around, they must get educated. That's the first thing we must have. We had a number of surveys on this, and it has been very well pointed out that education is a key factor in developing our knowledge and the awareness and understanding the process of how the earth grows or degrades and what matters, what does not matter. Unless you do that, there will not be a real solution to it. Somebody as a student possibly said that it is not that we have inherited the earth from our elders, but it is for our children. And that was so beautifully said. So if you leave the earth in a degraded state, mind you, your children are going to suffer. Our next generation is going to suffer. It is therefore not a small task to be neglected, or it is not something which you can do away with. Education increases the desire to protect our planet. Study shows that almost 23% increase in the environmental concerns happen when you are educated. and 46% of those are from tertiary education. 25% concerns for the planet are from those with no education. So it's a very important education. Educated households are more likely to use different methods of water purification during filtering or boiling. If you don't understand the scientific impact of things, it will be a very bad day. Only today, I was in one particular program where it was said the businesses are collapsing today, possibly because the business houses are not consulting the scientists. So there has to be a connect between the scientists, that means the people who know how things behave, and the business houses whose aim is to earn. You cannot earn at the cost of something which is which you cannot afford to lose. And that awareness, that responsibility has to come in, and that will come through education. May all our faculty again go to that website and choose one area that can be an area of extension activity that each one of you can take on as a university. Education can also reduce the vulnerability of this climate change that we are seeing today. Education supports sustainable farming, and thanks to the excitation given by the Dr. Subodh for bringing in an aspect of agriculture. Remember that Government of India today is giving a lot of stress on technology transfer in the area of agriculture. So if as a student, as a BTech student, or even as an MBA or BBA, you are also understanding the real technology behind agriculture and the aspects, you are going to contribute to the well-being of human existence as a whole. Education slows the population growth. If you look at the graphs which were shown, the first graph was very impressive, and I have noted every point there, that if it is the population growth continues in the manner that we are, this is going to be a problem, and it is again education which can control this education growth. Slowing this process reduces the amount of greenhouse gases in the environment. Women with at least 12 years of education will have 75 to 80% less children than women with lower level of education. So education for women is more important to have lower population pressure on the earth. Education also creates an opportunity for more green initiatives which are required in everything all around us. Greenhouses, green villages, green walls, green environment, green chemistry, green there are papers and then newspapers now being utilized, which are using our own greeneries. Now they are also fed with some seeds. When you throw them away, they can get and then plants are grown up. Each one of us must take the pledge on this particular Earth Day to contribute a bit in any of the area that you may feel like, so that you have a better Earth for tomorrow. May we live for longer, may we stay on this Earth, which is a better Earth, and may we be able to create and possibly contribute our bit through education to make this again a better place. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My real congratulations to all those who organized this and even had activities of poster presentation as well as the essay competition. That increases the awareness. Take on activities like going to school and talking about environment. Take on activities where our students are taken to the jungle or maybe some resort or a place where animals are living, and they actually see how the animals interact and what problems they are facing. Water crisis can be a biggest problem on earth. We have seen that water was not sold and we were having any water and we were not troubled. The day water was bottled and we started buying water, we were laughing at ourselves. ये क्या हो रहा है, पानी खरीद रहे. अभी कुछ दिनों में आपने देखा है ऑक्सीजन भी हम खरीद रहे हैं. और यदि हम ऑक्सीजन और वाटर खरीदने लगे, सब्जी तो खरीद ही रहे थे, अपने घर में नहीं उगा रहे थे, खरीद रहे थे, लेकिन यदि पानी और हवा खरीदने लगे तो हमारा एग्जिस्टेंस कितने दिन चलेगा ये खुद पता नहीं। एक कोविड नहीं, हजारों कोविड हम खुद पैदा कर सकते हैं यदि हम अपने हैबिट्स को नहीं बदले तो। My sincere request for MIT University Jharkhand faculty members and all those involved with research and development to utilize the policies of the government, because this is one government which is Jharkhand, which is where the greenery still exists. How we can take the example to other states, or maybe continue to sustain ourselves in this particular environment is an area of exploration. Do it so that you can take the lead in making this earth a better place. Thank you very much. My best wishes for the students. A large number were attending this and they must have gained a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for your valuable and informative speech. Now, I'd like to request Dr. Madhuri Mahato, ma'am, to deliver vote of thanks. Over to Madhuri, ma'am.
Thank you, Jaita, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With the blessings of our Honorable Founder President, sir, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, sir, and with the blessings of our Honorable Chancellor, sir, Dr. Atul Chauhan, sir, and our esteemed authorities who have always been ever supportive, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, our respected Registrar, sir, respected Director, sir, for the session to take place, in fact, we needed their support and we needed an impetus from them. So thank you, sir, for this. And coming to the speaker for the day, Dr. Sinha, sir, a very special thanks to you for giving us wonderful insights into nitrogen in agriculture, microRNA success, split root transcriptome data. And one wonderful thing, what it was interesting for me as a person who's not associated with this domain as such, was wheat expression browser and other intricate research data, how you have, very vividly you have explained to each one of us. That was, very wonderful for me to learn as a faculty also. I'm sure students and other participants must have enjoyed this, sir. Thank you so much for that. Lastly, I would like to thank all the judges who have been associated in judging the essays and poster competitions for putting in their time and efforts. I would like to thank all the faculty, staff, students of AUJ for their wonderful presence today. I would also like to thank the admin, IT, and media cell who have always supported us, and for this session as well, they have supported us and enabled us to conduct such a knowledge enhancing seminar. So with this, I would like to close off, and I would like each one of us to take a pledge at our own individual levels so that we would coexist and create a wonderful ecosystem on this planet Earth. Thank you so much. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Madhuri, ma'am. Wendell Berry, famous environmental activist, truly said that the earth is what we all have in common. And in that way, we can change our earth in better way, of course. And thank you all for joining this event. Special thanks to Dr. Subodh sir for accepting our invitation. Thank you, VC sir, Director sir, Registrar sir, all the faculty members and students. And special thanks to all the members of R&D team for all of your sincere involvement. Thank you. Now, I'll request Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to declare the session end.